don't know how he explained it to his colleagues here in Ottawa, but that was him working hard. I hope you all indulge me if I'm a little bit rusty on my oratorical skills. Age has taken a toll, and I was never the big talker of the family. Martha and I are separated about a year and a half, and pretty much shared our whole formative years together. My mother, who sort of had a sixth sense about these things, I think a lot of women have it too. I don't know why they have it, but she says, Leo, follow your brother. He's a trailblazer. And indeed he was. And what a trail it was. He was always a very hard worker. I mean, intense. But he started off in very humble beginnings. He was delivering newspapers. Except that he chose a morning newspaper route, which meant he had to get up before dawn and get the papers out before these people got up to go to work. Ungodly. But he never complained, and he finished it all and passed it on. We always like to talk about our days of picking tobacco. Now, people don't think of Connecticut as a place where tobacco is grown. But the very best tobacco that they use for the wrapper on the cigar, that's where it was. And in order to create that, they put up all of these nettings, which would keep in all the humidity, all of the, and the bugs and what have you. And it was a terrible job. Even so, Roger excelled at it. He was the #1 dragger of all the teams. It was piecework. And they were making decent wages at a time when the rest of us were glad to just get the 50 cents an hour that they were paying at that time and called it a day. We went to French Catholic schools. We had lots of French put into us and a lot of Catholicism, and I think that has always been a part of our lives and our families' lives. My mother, when she first came to the United States, and by the way, they both came from Quebec, just a little south of Quebec City, and they actually were about 5 miles apart then. But they never met until they came to Newport, Connecticut, and it was a French club. And I don't know if this is a pattern in our family, but he met her on the dance floor. From there on, it was, he knew this was the one. And my mother, they were both orphans. My mother, very young in life. My father's family, early adolescence, they both lost their mothers. They both came from large families, about 10 each, give or take, since some of them never survived. They were deeply religious. I remember my father's funeral. The priest talked about him as one of his pillars of the church. I don't know if they use that analogy often, but I figured they got that one right. Not only was he a pillar of the church, but he was preparing the next generation. He used to take his granddaughter, which, well, the Lord was taking care of, let's see, Ryan, he's right here. I can see him. He would take her to church every day, like he did. And then afterwards, they'd go to the Union Hall. He was very much into politics. He was the guy who people in our family used to say, oh, our show knows the story. So listen to Ursula, he's got a good grasp on it all. That was kind of what, but she was all set to set us on the way as a servant. And I guess all free-loving Canadians don't like being servants, but sometimes at some point in their lives, they have to do that. She learned that rich families had very good lives, and education played a very important role in that life. And so she made the promise to herself, her boys were going to get educated. And so a very unusual thing happened. We were sent off to boarding school 100 miles away with everyone in the working class, you know, went to the local high school, and even that they had a hard time getting through. But we thrived at the prep school. It was lonely. I won't say I didn't cry a number of nights, but somehow we survived it. Roger was there, so I figured it must be okay. And it was. That's where Roger got his, what I would call his upper class taste, like music and opera and all that kind of stuff. He used to play it so loud that before long I heard the neighbors humming Mozart. What's going on here? He was also a top-notch athlete. He ran the 440 very acceptably, but he was mainly a cross-country runner, which means he would be one of those guys who would run 10, 15, 20 miles back then. I was not. I had shortness of breath, and there was no sport I could do except I excelled at horseshoes. I had good ideas. Not quite what you call an athlete. Roger also played on the championship basketball team. Now, he doesn't brag about it, but I was extremely proud that here was this team for the prep school that was wiping out the league. It wasn't Roger's jump shot, which was okay. But there was one guy on the team who actually had a stupendous jump shot, and even went on to professional play. And he made the difference. You know, they used to say, "Feed the weedy." That was, I'll never forget. But Roger was there. He played first string, and you know, commended himself quite well on the basketball. We went on scholarship to college, also Assumption College. And he had always developed a very strong bent towards philosophy. That's how people think. You gotta learn how to think. And kind of spent his 4 years in philosophy. And he had, you know, a small group of what we used to call back then eggheads. There were people who, you know, had that kind of intellectual bent. So, by the time his senior year came around, his history professor came up to him. And history professors like to know where this is going, and he asked, "What are you going to do for a living? Being a, you know, a philosopher and such." And Roger didn't have an answer for me. He suggested, you know, Clark University, which was a neighboring university, has a preeminent course in geography. Probably, at least, if not the first, the best geography program in the country. And he found out during that course, this is something I think I want to do. And he dug into it like he always did. And before long, he came up with creative ideas like, you know, Clark had one of the first university computers. It filled our whole basement and does less than your telephone at the present time, much less than your telephone. And it was very hard to work with. you had to punch cards. And you missed even a comma, it could throw the whole thing off. But he was patient enough, and he worked at it, and he devised a plan to study what it was like, what made cities grow. He was very fascinated in the development of cities. And what he discovered was that inventiveness was probably a key factor. So what he did is he looked through all of the files of the patent office to see where, different things were done. And he focused on Worcester, Massachusetts, which had a lot of inventiveness there. And came up with a very nice pattern for this sort of thing. And he repeated this a number of times. He looked at pulp industry in Canada when he came to Canada and such. He went to Brazil. Pulp industry again. I guess pulp is a basic material for development. Towards the end of his training, again, he didn't know where he was going, what he was going to be, and he read in the paper, there was an opening here at the University of Ottawa. They were looking for bilingual teachers. They were short at that time, and they had a large young population that was coming up. It seemed like a great fit. Now, I should probably mention, it was only a short time earlier than this that Roger met Doris Lamontagne on a dance floor in Bristol. You'll see this pattern repeated, I can tell you. My father was a very good dancer. Roger was, he brought a lot of enthusiasm. Anyway, he married her, he finished his doctorate, or at least the study part of the document, and he brought Doris to Worcester, Massachusetts to finish out his studies. They lived in public housing, and he had lots of interesting stories to tell you about public housing. But once he got to Ottawa, things began to start looking up, and the family began to expand. 2 sons, 1 daughter, and he was very proud of them. But I think Doris carried the heavier part of that load at that period of their lives. Because he traveled a lot. He said it's what shoppers do. They have to go out, they have to see the world. Once that was, I'm not going to go about his career, because there are a lot of people in this room who know a lot more about it than I do. And you've already heard some of them all. But Roger, I believe, inspired many people in our family. His daughter, my oldest son, both became geographers by no coincidence. He has us all loving music, liking to read, and having intense arguments. They never got, how shall we say, overly emotional on that, just intense. He always had a very strong point of view, and the rest of us took turns to try to deal with him. He's going to be missed. I'm not sure how, it hasn't really fully occurred to me, because I have been in contact with him all throughout that time. And he was my mainstay, I might say. Adieu, Roger. Au revoir.
you.